My name is Ashley, and this is Let's Talk Dispatch.
I do. You're gonna do it. Do it really well.
And I believe the world needs more dispatchers.
Around in the mud, blood, and
plus
beer.
years that I'm not working 4th of July. 4th of July.
Say community policing, right? What about community dispatch?
So on this show, with the help of my guests, we will educate, empower, and support the heroes behind the headset. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Dispatch. It is super hot. I'm in the Bay Area, and even here, like right on the coast, it's heating up. So I am extremely happy, though I miss my old department, to not be in the Sacramento 105, 13 plus heat. And there was a saying we had out there, you know, sun's out, guns out. People are getting overheated. They're extra stressed, and the calls for service go up. And on today's episode of Let's Talk Dispatch, I'm bringing on a former dispatcher who literally went through the fire with me, my academy mate, and for sure, shit magnet, Maylani.
Oh yeah, shit magnet for sure. I was gonna say that, but I wasn't gonna be appropriate.
Oh yeah, no. Like the ultimate Pooh Magnet was you. I think every time that like about to leave shift or like it was chill, the phone would ring and you'd hear Maylani say some like out of pocket something like, "Where's the knife?"
Gun down, or
Yeah, like I need you to listen and put the gun down. And it's like everyone would sit up like, oh, we're about to get more calls, whatever Maylani's working.
oh really?
Oh my gosh. So yeah, so just introduce yourself. Tell me a little about yourself. Not me, because I know you, but tell the people a little bit about yourself.
I'm Maylani. I was a dispatcher for a little over 4 years. I think almost 5 years actually, which is insane to think about. Like that time just flew by. I'm no longer a dispatcher. I really do miss it a lot. Like I've thought about applying to agencies out here, and I'm just like, I think I don't want to work nights ever again. So,
Dude, I am now on days. Can you believe it?
yeah, it's been a struggle waking up early for sure. Like my job right now, I wake up early, but like I like the routine better. I feel like I could get more done. But yeah, so I'm no longer a dispatcher, working in like graphics / interior design in Texas.
Wild, just wild. So as I mentioned, we went through the academy together. So we were hired on around the same time. I ended up being a pre-hire for a little bit, but same academy class, same struggles. What made you apply, like initially, to even get into this role?
The story is so weird, actually. So I worked at Starbucks in Yuba City, of all places, and I worked right across from the courthouse and like the police station and all of that. So like we always had officers, deputies, everyone coming in, and I was always curious, like guys running for sheriff. It's a small town, so I would talk to him like first name basis, and like everything he would say was just interesting. So I knew I wanted to like pursue something in like the criminal justice area. And my boss at the time, she was like, "You really thrive in chaos." And at the time, I'm like, what chaos are you talking about? And she's like referring to rush hour at Starbucks. I'm like, this is not chaos, but like, okay. And so she was like, and like multitasking, you're really good at multitasking. And she had applied to be a dispatcher when she was younger, like never went through it. I think she had like kids, chose a different path. And so she was like, I think you'd be really good at it. You should apply. And so I did. And I actually applied for the sheriff's department first. I know. I was like, what? And then SAC PD like a month later, and I ended up hearing from SAC PD first. So I just went, like, I didn't know anything about dispatch at the time. I wasn't like shopping agencies. I was like, there were no pros and cons. I was like, whatever comes first, I'm going with.
You know, and I think that I've talked to my new department a bit about because we're going to be in a pretty good position staff wise over the next couple months, um, and at SAC PD, I feel like during our time there, it was fully staffed for the most part. I mean, we
Yeah.
were we were over hiring, and there wasn't a lot of forced time, and not that they've never experienced that, but I think during our little slot, being at that agency, they had a really good system.
Yeah.
And I think like why I was a pre-hire is like they were on it, like wanting to get people in the door, wanting to get people into academy.
Yeah.
And I think it really mattered with getting our academy class and let alone others after that.
Yeah. And like prior to me leaving, I think our academy too was like one of the academies where most of us like worked there for the longest time. Like a lot of other academies had people like come out of hot week and be like, I can't do this, or so.
Yeah, I
Leaving
think
whatever year we were.
yeah, right.
Something.
But I think we had 5, 6 folks in our academy.
Yeah, it was 1, 2, 3, 5, and then a lateral.
Then a lateral, yeah. So that's a pretty good sized academy, I would say, for a dispatch center, bringing them on all at the same time. What did you think, like first day of class? Like, what were your thoughts when you like walked in and it was like, this is real?
Obviously, like nervous, like anxious, excited, like it's something new. I'm all about like new, like I love to learn things. I knew it was going to be overwhelming. I was like, oh, it's going to be like college. And at the time I was in college, so it was like double the load. Like I think I was a little bit intimidated, like you and Ryan like had already worked there, so I was like, oh, maybe they have like a leg up, which you really didn't, which I appreciated. Like they gave you study material, yes, but they didn't give it all to you, which I thought was nice considering like our seniority is based off our test scores. So
Word.
Yeah, I mean, other than that, like just I'm so anxiety, like I hold anxiety like so much that like I want to throw up. So initially it was fine. Like I was nervous, I was holding my anxiety in. I was super nervous, and then like I think Beth came in and was like, "What's up, fuckers?" or something like that, and I like calmed down. I was like, "Oh, this is going to be great. This is going to be good."
I do remember like the opening line was like, this is how much money we have spent bringing you here.
Oh yeah. She was like, she made sure we knew.
Yeah, like we're invested in you. We want and need you to be successful. So any way we can help with that, let us know. Like it was just a real experience of like this job it's a little, it's a little dirty. It's a little, we're gonna be in this environment. We're gonna be talking about tough calls. We want you to be successful. Because I have talked to people talking through the dinner rules, and people hit me up on Instagram and whatnot, where they've said they've had this like terrible experience through training.
Yeah.
And me personally, and I know we went off to individual trainers and things like that after our academy, but at least the initial portion, I had such a wonderful experience, like with that department, going through that academy with you guys, which I think kind of held our group together,
Like I think if I would have gone through with anybody else, like seeing new academies come in and seeing academies before me, I don't think I would have done as well.
No, seriously. We had such a good group, and I think for the most part, our entire academy is still in dispatching, except maybe one person. And I think those are good numbers. Those are really good numbers. And it just kind of speaks to the way our department was running their dispatch academy. And it was creating such success.
Yeah.
Going into floor training, which That's a whole different beast, right? It's
Yeah,
going into the
nothing
floor.
can train you for that. I don't care what they say.
I do remember like us always being like, well, starting the day like test Fridays or whatever, and being like, hope at the end of the day that we're still
Right.
employed.
It
I
is what
don't.
it is. Like, we were just so tired, just like, and then after, like, what'd you get? What'd you get?
Yeah, what'd you get? Hey, what'd you get wrong?
Oh, that was the answer. Or like we'd turn it in and be like, oh my God, that was the wrong answer.
And you just like, all I need is 80. All I need is 80.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, so funny.
So I got through life. All I need is 80. Actually, all I need is 75.
So do you remember what it was like in the beginning, like when you hit the floor, and you were kind of getting those first couple calls? Do you kind of remember what that experience was like for you?
Yes, it was terrifying and exciting all at once. Again, anxiety, major anxiety. Um, my experience on phones, it was called Hot Week for us, right? Where we like got 2 weeks in academy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. So Hot Week for me was it was okay. Like my trainer, I'm not gonna say her name, but she was awesome. Like she was super like people would say mean, strict, whatever, but like I needed that, like, because I was in a position where like I was questioning so many things that I already knew, and she was like, she wouldn't answer me because she knew I knew it, and so I'm really thankful for that. I was on swing shift during Hot Week, so like that's crime right there. That's like crime hours. So again, the exposure for me during that time was really good. Like it helped me a lot. I wasn't like dealing with like people calling to ask the police questions. I was like getting hot calls and like getting them in. So, but again, a lot of anxiety for sure. Again, no amount of training. Like, yes, you learn the type codes, you learn like what you're supposed to do, but like, I don't think any amount of training can prepare you for like someone in sheer panic, like how to control them or like how to feel. Cause like, you don't really know how you're going to feel when that happens. Some people like deal with that internally and like shut down. But I think I did okay. I'm pretty good at like to me, this is gonna sound like I always tell everybody this sounds way worse than it is in my head, but like it's way easier taking it on the phone. Like I don't have to see it. I don't really have to follow through if I don't want to, and I don't really have time to think about it because 911 is just gonna drop in my ear next. And I don't really have time to be like, man, what I just heard on the phone was awful. Because like I gotta take care of the next person. So I like appreciate that in a sense.
It's so true, especially at a larger, bigger agency where there is a lot of high priority hot calls, high crime. I mean, like we were taking a lot of shootings, physical violence, domestic violence, robberies, any pursuits, guns, burglaries. A lot of those type of calls were coming in consistently. And if I had just taken one, it was quite possible that you were taking another one on the
Same
north end of the city.
or
You know what
same
I mean?
incident, you
Or
know,
same,
like
yeah, multiple people calling in on the same big incident. And
yeah.
when talking about anxiety, because I think like we need to acknowledge, especially folks who are wanting to get into this line of work, that having the anxiety, it's not a bad thing. It's not
No.
like, oh my God, you have anxiety, you can't do this job. That's not it at
Yeah.
all. But it's how do you manage your anxiety through this line of work? Did you figure out any like things that helped you better manage that as you progress through this career?
Talking it out loud. I know it's annoying to the person I'm sitting next to. Like they probably think I'm talking to them. I'm such a talker, like especially when I got on the radio side, like it could be like they'll say one running and I would be like I would literally scream and be like, let's go. Like you just have to like let it out. Like
Yeah.
because I in the beginning when I was in training, I could feel myself like literally like, oh my gosh. And then like I was just like feeling sick, like yeah. But and then after Hot Week too, like when we were in training after academy, it was like intimidating in a sense because there's a lot of OG dispatchers that aren't quick to open up, which makes like new people feel tense. And we shouldn't feel that way because honestly, like a lot of them are stuck in their ways and we're freshly trained on new like policies and like what's going on. So it's intimidating, but like we just have to know like we were trained on this and we were trained on the most up-to-date things. So like we essentially know what we're doing, or else we wouldn't have gone through academy and passed.
That's true. That is so true. There is definitely, especially with the bigger agencies, I mean, even the smaller ones too, folks who've been doing it this way for X amount of time. And then the new kids come in, excuse me, the new kids come in and they're like, well, we were taught to do it this way. And they're like, well, that doesn't matter. We're gonna keep doing it this old way, which is confusing as a trainee. And, you know, CTOs out there that are listening, like this is a confusing thing for trainees who are just trained on policy and they're having to hit the floor. And yes, style is always a thing, right? But if we're being told a policy change is this, we should be doing the policy change, style versus policy all the time. Now, trainees, if your trainer is telling you to do something a certain way, you do it. You do it that way when you're in it, and then you figure it out and you talk about it later. But
or you argue. I'm kidding.
Or you argue about it, right? But you know, we have to be comfortable talking to our trainees, to our trainers, and trainees should be put in positions where they can feel heard. And the trainers need to know, like, it's not personal. I'm trying to soak up all the information that I can, and I'm trying to do it right. And if your way is different than the policy, yeah, like I'm gonna ask some questions and I'm gonna try to figure it out. But we definitely should always be following back on policy. It's just a CYA thing at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You know, if the department has put a new policy in place that isn't what it used to be, and the dispatchers are doing the old policy, we're just opening ourselves up as dispatchers for liability.
Yeah.
You know, so we just need to continue to follow policy, even during training, especially during training.
Well, yeah, and then you also sometimes when you're not on the same page as someone in your dispatch center, like a citizen will remember that and be like, well, last time it was like this. And I can't tell you how frustrating that is, like when you're doing it right, but somebody did them a favor and like now you have to do it again.
Yeah, and it just sets the standard that not everybody gets, and we need to avoid that as much as we can, for sure. Do you remember your first call for service?
Okay, so I remember my first call in each section of like training, okay? But my very first call, and I hate all my academy mates for this because we were learning our phone system. No, listen. We were doing our phone system and we were supposed to just be learning our phone system, like going through like how to dial, whatever. And I was the last one to go on this training. And so they were keeping me out of the loop all day. And so I go out to the actual like dispatch floor because that's the only way to really see like the phone screen. And our trainer's like showing me the phone screen. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like, yeah. And then she goes, okay, are you ready to answer the phone? And I'm like, you're so funny. Like, no, we're not answering the phone. And I literally like turned bright red. I got really hot. And she was like, no, really, we're going to answer the phone. Okay. And so I did. And like my very first call was a non-emergency call. So I was really thankful for that. And like, mind you, I'm supposed to be parroting everything that my trainer is saying in my ear. And I'm not listening to her. Like, it was a mom calling about like in schools, they sometimes send your kids home with like paper you can fill out for like if they go missing, like this is a picture of my kid, this is whatever. And she was like, am I required to fill this out? And I was like, no, like it's not from the police. Like, and we just were like talking for a little bit. And then the trainer was like, you need to get off the phone. And I was like, okay. And after she was like, it's a good thing like you can talk and like you have like common sense because like you were supposed to be parroting me, but you weren't. And I was like, oh, okay. So that was my very first call.
Oh my
Non-emergency.
God.
I don't think I got any 911 calls that were like legit during that like 5-minute interval.
Mhm.
Hot week, my first call was the sheriff of Sacramento County, the sheriff.
Oh, really?
Calling. Mhm.
The guy? Like,
Yeah.
oh my God. That's hilarious.
He was calling, unfortunately, to let us know that they were starting the procession for Deputy Stetson.
Mm,
So
mhm.
that was my very first call on Hot Week.
That did I forgot that did happen during
During
our academy.
Mhm.
Yeah, because we had a few unfortunate officer-involved stuff happen during our time out there,
Mhm.
and I forgot that was really early in
Mhm.
our time
Yeah,
at
we
that,
weren't even out of academy. And
yeah, no.
then my first, like, call on training out of academy,
Mm.
um, I don't remember. I might have been I don't remember why I was on graveyard because I remember being on day shift out of academy. Like I was with a trainer who was on day shift, but for some reason I was like on night shift or the night shift trainer was with me. But I do remember it being nighttime and it was a shooting call. Very first call, shooting call. And like I was preparing myself mentally for those kinds of things, but like the second the lady was like, my husband was shot, I looked at my trainer, she looked at me and she goes, I was like, but the lady was very calm, surprisingly, considering her husband was
Mhm,
shot. And so
mhm.
I was able to handle that call as calmly as she was, which was insane. She's like, we don't even talk to anybody. I don't even know what's going on. Like, my husband was just shot through the garage, all
Oh,
this stuff.
wow.
I was able to get the call entered, I think, in like less than 10 seconds or something like that.
Mhm.
I just wrote, someone shot. Like,
Yeah. And,
so,
like, people who talk about, like, going in for interviews and things like that and, like, scenario questions. I feel like a lot of big scenario questions that departments are asking is like, "This is happening. What information do you need?" And I
yeah,
think
like,
one of the best answers is like, "I need to know the location, and I need to know a brief summary of what's happening, and we can figure out the rest as we go." There's
yeah,
been many a calls where I'm like, "Address, shot.
yeah,
Address, like, wounded, like, whatever it is. Address, robbery," and we're
yeah.
rolling, and then I'm adding all the rest of the info as I'm already having folks start heading that way.
Yeah, and I remember going on a ride along, my very first ride along during training. It was a graveyard officer. It was my favorite ride along because he was asking me a lot of questions to understand dispatch, and I was also asking him a lot of questions. So I felt it was like beneficial to both sides. And he
Mhm.
said, I don't care about anything except what's going on, the location, and if you can get a vehicle of a suspect leaving, get it first because I can't tell you how many times going to a scene I'm passing the suspect vehicle or they're getting past me because that information's last. And I was like, that's actually really smart because like we're not necessarily told to get suspect vehicle first. Like we're told to get like suspect. But it
Mhm.
makes sense because, like, I was like, yeah, how many times have like the suspect gotten away
Mhm.
right past
Yeah.
the officer?
Yeah, what are they leaving? Do they leave on foot or vehicle? Okay, what's the
Yeah,
vehicle, right?
exactly.
If they're in a vehicle, not that their body description doesn't matter, but we're looking for the car
Yeah,
before we're looking for the person,
exactly.
so no, it's super true. I mean, especially with like the high priority calls and just being able to manage and your trainer like, okay, now it's time to do what we've been practicing. Like it's so
Yeah,
true because you kind of like when you're new, you're just not used to hearing that type of trauma. And I think now when I hear stuff like that, I'm just kind of like, it activates, right? It's like, oh,
yeah,
I've been here before. Whereas when you're new, you're like, oh my God, this is the most insane thing ever. And now it's like, oh, that's really
yeah,
not that crazy. Like it's unfortunate, but it's just the reality for sure.
yeah.
Do you think that going through phone training prior to radio was helpful?
A little bit, yes and no. I think like it was helpful to get one thing done at a time because like had we had to do both at the same time, like that would have just been an overload. I think a lot more people would fail out of academies. I think you would have like your retention would just not be there. I think it's helpful to start at phones first because like you need to get familiar with reading calls, asking certain questions. But like other than that, I don't see like you go into radio and it's just like you're listening to officers and I think that like honestly I think that you need more training in radio because you have to get like radio ear, you have to like figure out what these guys are saying as they chew on their microphones. I think you have to honestly type a lot faster. Yeah, I think that they're different. I don't think that one like there are agencies where you do one or the other. So I don't think
That's
that
true.
you need to do phones training to go into radio or vice versa.
Yeah, no, that is true, and that's another thing people can look at when they're considering departments, right? Is like, do you want to work at a department that's dual trained, where you're
Yeah.
doing a portion of your shift in phones and a portion of your shift in radio, or do you want to just be a phones or be a radio person? And there are, I mean, I think one of our biggest like 415 debates and dispatch is like folks wanting more radio time. And it's like,
And I think that we were like, I think after our academy it changed. Like, I think that like we went through so much radio that like some of us were like, take it, I don't want radio.
dude, after I completed radio
I
training,
didn't
I
want
was like,
radio.
I don't want to look at her status screen. I don't want
Yeah.
to talk to an officer. I was
Yeah.
so freaking over it. Like 12 hours of radio, parroting, high priority calls, like 24/7. It's like it's just so draining, but you need it,
Yeah.
right? You need that repetition. You need
Yeah.
that time. You need that exposure. I hated motor cops. Like
Yeah.
it was
But and also I think that like officers and sergeants in certain areas can make a channel like undesirable. Like that's the reason I would not want to work sometimes radios because I would get stuck with a certain channel or a certain area of Sacramento. And I'm like, no, those officers are not kind. Like I'm literally just doing my job. Like, sorry, I have to monitor your sandbox and make sure that you're sharing your toys. Like I like
yeah. It's so true because there is a certain level of like drama, right, between dispatch and patrol. Like
Yeah.
they don't understand us. Well, they don't understand us. You know, but at the end of the day, we're all just trying to do our job. And it is true. Like it goes a long way. And it's us in dispatch too. Like we can be petty, you know, to create, you know, good relationships and good boundaries with our patrol and our dispatch. And one thing I can say, now that I'm in a smaller agency, it's super weird. And when I say smaller, I'm saying smaller in the sense that I know all of my officers, you know, like I'm building, I'm building relationship, especially now that I'm on day shift. I build relationships with all these folks where in Sacramento, I don't know these folks. Like, I don't know you. It's such a big agency. You know, I know your identifier. I know the sound of your voice if it's an area that I'm working a lot. And I know your work ethic. Like, I know if you're someone who is going to the call, regardless if it's paper, who jumps on the call to help with high priority, who makes my life easier. Like, that's how I had a relationship with my officers there. Whereas here, I'm like, oh, I actually know these people. I've had communications with them. We have rapport. We have personal relationships. And that can be challenging in itself because now I get a high priority call. And now I'm like a little more like about, you know, the people who are out there because I know them, you know. Whereas in SAC, it was like, I was like, oh, people are shooting guns in the air. You go, you go, you go, you go. All right. I met my quota. I know I hit all my policies. Everyone's going who needs to go. We checked for air. We checked for canine. Everyone's going, cool, done.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was it. But now that I have like this, personal understanding of who these guys actually are, like it weighs a little different, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
That's why in a sense I'm like kind of thankful that I didn't have the opportunity to meet everybody at SAC PD, because I don't want to like dispatch my friend to something like that, But then at the same time, like it would have been nice to at least put a face to like an identifier, or like, and I feel like a lot of times when people see you in person and kind of like get to know your personality, things come off different, like when you send the messages or over the air. Maybe not for me, because apparently I just sound so unenthused and disinterested on the air, whatever.
Oh my gosh. Well, I just sound raspy, so they don't know if I'm
They think
sick,
you're
went to
sick.
a concert. Dude, I remember when I first started, the fire department would call and be like, I remember they called and Daniel answered the phone and he turned around. He was like, "Yeah, they wanted me to tell you feel better."
You're like, thank you.
I feel like I get a lot more blessings and a lot of more feel betters, and
Yeah.
I don't get yelled at as much because they're like, "Oh, she's working and she's sick."
Yeah.
And it's like, no, just raspy,
Lucky.
just raspy.
Yeah.
Gosh, what advice would you give someone who's considering joining this wonderful career of dispatching?
I thought about this question and I'm like, what advice did I get? And I'm like, I don't think I got any advice.
They said you're full of chaos. Go work as a
You're like,
dispatcher.
don't do it. I think that you just really have to think about if you want to do it before you do it, because like it was instilled in us, it does cost a lot of money to run a background check. It does take a long time, and you could be taking up a spot of someone who's really interested. You really have to think about how you compartmentalize things and how you deal with your emotions. And like if you're a fighter or if you're going to like run from something. And I didn't think that made sense at first, because like, oh, I'm on the phone. Like, what do you mean fight or flight? But like if you're afraid of something happening and like that situation happens on the phone, you're going to shut down. So you just really have to think about like every aspect of it. Like, am I going to get put on graveyard? How's that going to affect my family? What's it going to do to my mental and physical health? Because it does do a lot, like especially if you're on graveyard and like you're not getting the sun every day. Or if you're on graveyard and you have kids and you need to wake up and like not get sleep and you have to go take care of them. Like there's a lot to take into account when you go into dispatch, because you're not guaranteed anything, especially at first. Like it takes a long time for you to get seniority and for you to like establish like a routine, if you even stick around that long. So
Yeah, I definitely think
about everything.
Yeah, definitely considering how all of this affects your home life, how your circle of support, how they're gonna support you through it. Because I remember when I was going through academy, my partner was just, I was like, I need to be left alone to study.
Yeah. For sure.
I need this time, and I need you to be okay with this time, and that's super important as well. If you're not going to have those supports built in, how are you going to create them going into this training and this process?
Yeah, no, I also think it's important for you to speak with whoever is supposed to be your support system throughout that, and let them know that like you're going to be low on giving support to them, because like you're going to be drained. And I didn't realize that, but like that's for sure what happened to me. I was like, I can't give you my time and energy right now because it's being placed elsewhere. Like it's a lot of work. You go to academy, it's all day. Then you have to go home and you have to study, because if you don't study, you're not going to pass your tests. Like it's a lot. And so like, and I honestly think it made me more independent, and like I didn't count on the person I was with at the time for anything. And then we ended up like splitting. So it was a blessing in disguise.
No, but it's so true that you're just drained, right? You're focusing on keeping employed. In our situation, we were academy, and if you didn't pass your test on Friday with the 80%, you were out. And so that's a stressor. Like, what do you mean I won't get a paycheck next week if I don't pass this test, right?
Yeah.
And then there's the learning part, which is just tiring in itself. And then I'm now answering calls, learning how to help people through their worst day, while also learning how to deal with hearing someone's worst day.
Yeah.
So that in itself, it's like, yeah, if I come home and I just heard, I remember one of these early calls that I had during training. This lady was beat up by her partner, and he beat her with a belt, but like a big like brass end of a belt buckle thing. And there was someone else there with her, and she was just, as I imagine it, what it was being described to me, kind of like on a toilet, like wobbling and bleeding from the face. And I come home from hearing that, having that picture in my head, like, that's 5 years ago. I still remember that call. I can still hear it. It was nighttime. I still get all those little things with it. And I come home, and then you're complaining about, I don't know, the dishes not being folded, just like.
It puts things in perspective, makes you appreciate things.
And not that things that are bothering my partner are not important. Like, we just need to be aware that what I'm going through, especially during training, and we need to be responsible for how we deal with that as well, so it doesn't impact our partners, right?
Yeah. So we had a rule when, like, unless I want to talk about it, let's not talk about it. It's like, at first, like, I would get home and be like, oh, what calls did you get today? I'm like, why would you ask that? Like, that's
true.
So that was the rule. If I don't want to talk about it, or if I don't start talking about it, we're not talking about it.
Oh, I think that's a great rule. Like, if I don't bring up my calls and my day at work, like, let's just leave it at that. Like, let's just say it was all sunshine and rainbows,
Totally.
How do you feel that the job has changed you?
Ooh. So I was really bad at this before dispatch, but like I got even worse at it being a dispatcher. I'm quick to cut people off if the conversation isn't going the way I want it to, or you're not answering me like the question that I asked. So I have since worked on that, and I have gotten a lot better, but like that's a real thing. And I would notice that at the comm center too, with like some other people I talk to, like if they're not interested in what I'm saying, done, like they're asking the next question, or they're going to turn to talk to somebody else. And that's like a real thing.
Oh my God, it's so true. And for those who are like, what is she talking? It's like, when you're a dispatcher, you are trained to get the important information as quickly as possible in an orderly fashion. So when you're having conversations with folks and they're not giving you information in that kind of style, or it's super drawn out, and it's like, and then the sun rose above the mountaintop, and that is when I fell, and you're just like, let's get, you fell, why, like, what? And it's like a real thing for dispatchers. I think maybe anyone in the first responder field, because like sometimes I can literally like feel it in my like chest, like, you gotta, and I can like I'm literally telling myself, like, okay, like, it's okay, like, they're telling you a story, and
sometimes we don't have time for that,
right? Like, we're engaging, we're spending time, and I'm having this conversation in my head with myself to like hype up the person I'm talking to, because I want to hear your story. I do, but I'm damaged a bit. I need you to tell your story a little quicker.
No, and also, like, I'm not so naive to the crime that happens every day. Like I think before dispatch, like I lived in Sacramento since I was 9. And I never knew like what was happening right under my nose, right? And then go work for the city and everything's popping off and like you know what areas like to stay away from. Like I'm not naive to that anymore. I'm also more aware of my surroundings. Um if I'm uncomfortable in a situation, I'm quick to memorize what a person looks like, what they're wearing, what they drive, all this stuff. Because I never want to be a caller. Like, if I have to call the police, I never want to be a person that has no information because I know how frustrating that is. And like, I'd always think, like, what is the point? Why did you call 911? Like, was it just like your checklist of being a good Samaritan? Like, did you feel better? Like, you provided me zero information that's going to help in this investigation if that's what it becomes. So I never want to be that person. And I also just think that like if something were to happen to me, like it'll be helpful for me to memorize all that stuff. So like I'll quiz my fiance. I'll be like, "Did you see what that guy was wearing?" And he'll be like, and so now he knows. He's like he scopes people out.
Oh my gosh, ridiculous!
It's like,
Maylani,
honestly,
ain't no one taking you.
I remember one of our CTOs saying, "I quiz my daughter. I will be like, I'll go down a random street and be like, where are we? Get me home." Or what was that person wearing? I think that's such a good thing to teach kids or people in general.
Yeah, no, it really is because I'm still terrible with geography. I mean, I can read a map, and it's better now that I'm back in the Bay, like where I'm from. Like
Yeah.
so I've been running around these streets all my life, so it's a little easier. But
Yeah.
just being able to like walk out to a street and know if it's traveling east or west or north or south, like in it, that's tough still for me. Like I'm still like, oh, I don't know, like give me a landmark dispatcher because that's how I can operate, like going towards the freeway or going away from the freeway.
Yeah, that's what I would say to people too. I think more people are like that. So
yeah, definitely. So Maylani, you are no longer a dispatcher.
I know.
What has life after dispatch been like for you? Because I think it's important for folks who have done it for 5, 10, 15, 25 years to know like you can bow out and it still be a wonderful thing.
Yeah. Life has been good. It's definitely a slower pace, which like took some adjusting. I like when I worked dispatch, I also coached like a dance team. I also was in school. Like I never stopped. And so that like slowed down for me after dispatch, which I really enjoyed, but I also didn't know what to like do with myself initially. I was like, I need to be doing something. Dispatch definitely opens like a lot of doors for jobs. Like literally you could apply to like any job and be like, oh my gosh, she can de-escalate, she can multitask. Like it's wild what it will do for you. I left California, which is like, honestly, I'm a California girl through and through, so it has been a little bit of a struggle. The weather here sucks. I'm super close to my family, so that's been like an adjustment too. But other than that, it's nice. It's like I'm enjoying things more. I'm getting to do more things.
Yeah.
Because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna go back to working 5 days a week. I don't have time for anything. But like most people in my life work 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. So like I get to spend more time with them, or like I'm on the same schedule. Yeah, I'm getting more sleep. I've noticed that like my mental and physical health is a lot better. When I left dispatch, that was like really rough, like really rough. So that took a little while to get like back into things. But I miss dispatching still sometimes. And I think I miss some of the people we work with for sure. I just miss like
I mean, you miss me.
chaos.
I know you miss
I
me.
do. I just thrive in chaos and like I think like I'm a chaos coordinator. Like what can I say?
That's so
Dispatching, coaching teenagers, teaching them how to dance, like just everything I've ever done is just chaotic and wild.
Maylani, the chaotic dispatcher. I think that might be the title of this episode. I
Oh
think that
gosh.
might be it. Well, thank you so much for jumping on with me, Maylani. I mean, we went through it. So
You missed a question.
I missed a question. What I missed? What question?
You missed. Where did it go? What responsibilities did you have as a dispatcher?
Maylani, what responsibilities did you have as a
I had good
dispatcher?
answers for this.
Okay, let's hear it. My bad.
So like the basic responsibilities obviously are like answering the phone, non-emergency, emergency, depending on like what your agency does. The agency we worked for, you would have like respond to emails for citizens. We had text to 911, which was like a blessing and a curse. No, really.
So true.
Dispatching
Still.
units, those are like your basic responsibilities, but then like you have like the responsibility of like remaining calm and like being a voice of reason. Like you play so many different roles as a dispatcher. So like that's a responsibility. You have to stay on top of where your units are. I remember I had a CTO that was like, cover my status screen and be like, where are your units? And I'm like, oh my God, I don't know. You also have to provide great customer service, and like that's so hard sometimes because like this person's just cussing me out for no reason. I want to cuss back at them. I can't, so I'm gonna put myself on mute and do it, and then I'm gonna answer them calmly. Like there are a lot of different responsibilities. You have to be a great listener, a great communicator. Like dispatching's literally a giant game of telephone, like literally. Like you answer the phone. If you don't put it in correctly, the dispatcher's not going to dispatch it correctly. The unit that's not listening is going to ask the same question, even though it's in the call. Like you just have to make sure that you're a good listener and communicator at the end of the day. And that's like a huge responsibility of dispatch. So, yeah, that was my answer.
Yeah, you gotta yeah, you gotta be able to like take that chaos, convoluted reporter who's yelling, screaming, maybe hitting things or getting hit, and try to get all that information and put it in a nice little box for the radio side to be able to go, I understand what's happening.
Yeah.
And then then tell the officers in a way and manner that they go, okay, that's what's happening, and then they can mentally prepare. And I think that's something I learned from one of my trainers early. It's like the way you say things is gonna get the officer in whatever certain mode.
Yeah, and how you say
right?
it. Sure.
And how you say it. So if I say something like, car took off at a fast rate of speed, they're gonna be like, oh, okay. But if I put in, but if I miss the part where it's like, guy got yanked out of his car by a guy with a gun, and then that person got into the car and left at a fast rate of speed, like that's different. The officer's going to prepare mentally different. They're going to be thinking about their tactics, things like that, or even like guys inside of his house refusing to come out in an argument with his family. Well, that reads much different than like wife's calling in, husband is threatening her with a handgun, refusing to let them leave the house. Like these are all like, you have to tell whatever truth is being told to you. That doesn't mean that our callers are lying to us, but we have to be able to depict the truth that is being told to us in a manner so everyone is prepared to the best of their ability and knowledge prior to showing up to be able to provide the best service that we can.
Sometimes that's hard. I remember an officer officers would come in and like talk to us during post, I think. And I remember an officer telling me like the way that we communicate, so like the way that we type things out, describe it as best as you can, because he told me that a dispatcher wrote like woman yelling, like screaming. Okay. He goes, I listened to the call and that woman was screeching for her life. And like even sometimes just putting like yelling for her life or like screeching or like Anything descriptive like that is the difference between an officer responding code 3 and an officer being like, they're just yelling at each other.
So true. You got to be specific as possible. And I mean, it can be frustrating if you feel like your reporting party is not being truthful, and they're kind of fluffing it up and trying to get a quicker response, but that's not your job to really worry about it.
Yeah.
All you can do is ask them the question, they provide the answer. That answer that they provide is what we give to the radio dispatcher or the responding officers.
Yeah, your opinion doesn't necessarily matter. And I learned that like the hard way. I literally one time in a call put sounds like fireworks. And it was in fact gunshots. I also think there were fireworks, but I will never put that in the call ever again.
Right? Oh
Sounded like fireworks. How am I supposed to know? I'm on the phone.
Yeah. So true. So true. Well, is there anything else I've missed that I don't want to miss?
I don't think so.
Well, again, thank you, Maylani, for joining me. We talk quite frequently and really have been through everything and anything that a dispatch career from start to really finish can throw at you. So I do appreciate you coming on with me and sharing this time.
Thank you.
All righty. I'll be right back with you.
Okay.
All right, everybody. That was our episode of Let's Talk Dispatch with my academy mate, Maylani. Really, if you are going through the training to be a dispatcher and you do have the privilege of coming on at the same time as a bunch of other people, there's something really special about it. You know, no one else in the world is ever going to go through that process with you or the same way as your first time. So for me, my academy mates, I really appreciate you guys. I still talk to most of you. That's my academy was BDA 18.2. So shout out to you guys. Until next time, stay raspy, everybody. Thanks for joining us on today's episode of Let's Talk Dispatch. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube at The Raspy Dispatcher, follow us on Instagram, and check out Let's Talk Dispatch anywhere you listen to podcasts. I'll see you next time, and stay raspy.